Hi, good morning. Welcome to our English class for IBPS, and we have one commenter already. Good. Dhyaneshwar Bhagwan Rathod. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, Dhyaneshwar. So let's get started with our class today. We are doing a class on vocabulary and we are focusing on analogies and one-word substitution today. Okay, so analogy is something that you would have seen in some papers. As you already know, you cannot really predict the IBPS and other banking papers, but we have seen quite a few questions of this sort, and this is a little more than vocabulary. I would call it an application of your vocabulary practice. Okay, so tell us about yourself, Dhyaneshwar. What do you do? Meanwhile, let's look at the goals for this class. As I said, we would be doing analogies and word substitution. We start with the previous session's CPP question. Okay, the previous session's CPP questions were according to the new rules of framing parajumble questions. Okay, so according to the new rules, there are 5 statements given, one of which is the odd man out. That has nothing to do with the paragraph as such. Okay, so it's your job to start with finding the odd man out. You eliminate that and then move on to rearrange the remaining sentences into a meaningful passage. Okay, so it is slightly time consuming, I understand, but it's a very good it's a very good exercise of your reading skills, I would say that much. Okay, so let's look into the question. As we know it, stained glass was almost entirely reserved for ecclesiastical spaces. That is the fixed first sentence. That is the introduction sentence. We are looking for something that follows this. You also have a conclusion, by the way. He has accomplished that mission with unmistakable style. So here you see that he is not something that is already introduced. Yes, Dhyaneshwar? Dhyaneshwar, by the way, were you part of our Parajumble's introduction and advanced classes? Niranjan Kumar says, hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, hi, good morning. Niranjan, so how is your preparation? Okay, so now let's look into this. He is something that is not introduced already. Okay, so this has to follow the introduction part. Okay, so this cannot be the first part of your sentence, paragraph. It is my mission to bring it kicking and screaming out of that mellow, says Clark. Okay, now Clark is a name. Yes, that could be the pronoun that is used here, but let's see. The very first was the jewel-like windows he designed for a Cistercian church in Switzerland. Here again you find he. So this cannot be the sentence that follows the given introduction sentence. Renaissance art has flourished ever since. And then 2 recent projects show his genius in the separate worlds, the sacred and the mundane. Okay, so it is very clear that only B can follow the given introduction sentence. Any problems here? Okay, so B is your first. And something else, to find your odd man out, now that you have a fair idea of what exactly is happening in the paragraph, look at this. Renaissance art has flourished ever since. You do not have a timeline that you speak of in the other sentences to have an ever since here, number 1. 2, this is the only sentence that talks about Renaissance art. Okay, now Renaissance art belonged in the historical times. Okay, the medieval times. So you would know if you have you know, studied history properly. Renaissance artist Da Vinci, okay, Raphael, and the other one, I forget his name. So Leonardo da Vinci, Raphael, and someone else. I'm sorry, I look like an idiot now. Nevertheless, okay. So Renaissance art is from the medieval times. Okay, this has nothing to do with the rest. So D is eliminated. That is your odd man out. There is absolutely no problem about that. Now coming to the order of the other sentences. So you have B first. Then look at this. As we know it, stained glass was almost entirely reserved for ecclesiastical spaces. We have B in the first place. Then this is done. So what follows B? It is my mission to bring it kicking and screaming out of that milieu, says Clark. Okay. Then you have, he has accomplished that mission with unmistakable style. Okay. So you have a he here. The very first was the jewel-like windows he designed for, a church in Switzerland. Then 2 recent projects. So you know for a fact that CE, that is the order. So E has to come after C, because you talk of the first job where he used stained glass, that is C, and then you have 2 recent projects. So there is a definite timeline, right? So E follows C, you know that much. And then look at this. He has accomplished that mission with unmistakable style. Okay, so this comes after B, because what is the mission here? To bring it out of the milieu, right? So that is the mission. So A comes after B, and then there is CE. Any problem here? So that is about your previous session's CPP question. We move on. Today's book suggestion is 3 Men in a Boat. Dhyaneshwar and Niranjan, have you ever read 3 Men in a Boat, the whole book, or excerpts from it? One of the most interesting and famous excerpts from 3 Men in a Boat would be Uncle Podger hangs a picture. Okay, so this is a very, very, very humorous book about 3 men who take a journey. Okay, so they miss their train, and then they go on this 2-week journey. Okay, and it doesn't really have a story as such. It's just a collection of anecdotes and incidents that happens during this boat ride. Okay, so if you are a fan of subtle British humor, this is the book that you need to pick up today. Okay, so the reason I suggested this, the reason I put forth this particular chapter from 3 Men in a Boat is, as children, this story was almost always part of our English textbooks. Okay, so it's a very funny anecdote about Uncle Podger, who says he'll do a job by himself, okay, to hang a picture. And then he makes sure that he does a shoddy job out of it while making use of every single resource at home. And then he claims that he's done the job all by himself and perfectly. Okay, so it's a reckoner of sorts on subtle British humor. So you can probably, if you like British humor, then you would strike a chord with this. Okay, so go ahead, read this book. It's a very short read, by the way, and if this impresses you enough, you can go ahead, pick up the sequel as well, and that would be 3 Men in a Bummel. Okay, so before we start with analogies and word substitution, we are looking into something called portmanteau words today. Okay, portmanteau is a French term. Okay, and it denotes that set of words that are made of 2 distinct words that are joined together to make a new word. Okay, now look at this. Consisting or combining two or more separable aspects or qualities, that is portmanteau. Okay, so portmanteau word is something where you put together two separate words, come up with a different word. Okay, now let's look at this. Brexit. All of us have heard of Brexit. Dhyaneshwar and Niranjan, have you heard of Brexit? What do you know about Brexit? Okay, so this is Britain and exit, and you get Brexit. Okay, so very recently Britain exited from the EU, the European Union. Okay, so this is the exit of Great Britain from the European Union. It's not really a real word, it's formed from Britain and exit. And that is how a portmanteau word is formed. Okay, so here is a list of such portmanteau words. Okay, so let's look at a few very often used portmanteau words. One is taxi cab. Okay, a taxi and a cab put together, that is taxi cab. Okay, then breakfast plus lunch. Niranjan and Dhyaneshwar, when do you have breakfast? I have my breakfast say at 8:15, okay, and my lunch is typically at 12:30. But let's say I am on vacation and I choose to wake up really late, okay, and I have one meal at 11. That becomes my breakfast and lunch, hence brunch. So you get the idea, right? This is how portmanteau words are formed. Then there is fantabulous, which is fantastic plus fabulous. Something that is fantastic and fabulous, that's fantabulous. Blog. How many of you know that blog form web plus log? You log something on the web, so you get blog. Okay, then of course you have vlog, which is nothing but a video blog. So that's a vlog. And then there is Spanglish. How many of you have watched the movie Spanglish? Anyone? Dhyaneshwar? Niranjan? So Spanglish is spoken either in Mexico, in other places where English and Spanish are spoken. Any other places like that? New Mexico, California, where the Spanish population is very significant. So no, not aloha, hola. Okay, so if I say hola, how are you? Hola is hello in Spanish. By the way, I think they say hola and not hola. H is probably silent there. But pardon me, I don't really speak Spanish. Okay, so if you say hola, how are you? I speak Spanish. Or I speak Spanglish. Then there is podcast, which comes from iPod plus broadcast. Do you listen to podcasts, anyone? If you do, it comes from pod and cast from broadcast, hence podcast. That again is a portmanteau word. Rolodex is nothing but rolling index. Rolodex. Emoticon, which is emoji plus icon, okay, or emotion plus icon. So if I have a smiley or all this, they're emoticons, right? It comes from emotion or emoji plus icon. What do you think is spork? It's spoon plus fork. That's a spork. What do you think is absitively, by the way? Absolutely and positively. That's absolutely. And then spamdalism. Spam plus vandalism. That's spamdalism. Quillo is a quilt plus pillow. Okay, so portmanteau words, well, you get the idea, right? It is nothing but two words put together to form a new word. So we will look at previous sessions contest question, and that is exodus. Exodus means sending away or mass exodus. For example, there was a mass exodus of scientists from Germany following Nazi sympathizers and their actions. Okay, and that is when Albert Einstein chose to go to the USA. Exodus, exodus, sending away or an output. Okay, so going away from a certain place. The opposite would be influx, which is bringing in. Okay, so we are looking for the antonym, and it would be influx, exodus, influx. I doubt people got this right. Nevertheless, now let's go to the contest question of this class. Good luck with that. So I have framed today's contest question with pop culture in mind, and of course today's class that has to do with portmanteau words as well. So I introduced portmanteau words. I'll be making use of that here. Go ahead, have fun. Okay, so now we move on to analogies. Analogies are tested not just in your IBPS question paper. Several competitive examinations make use of analogy questions to test not just your vocabulary skills but also your reasoning skills. Okay, so analogy is nothing but A is to B this structure. Okay, so it's nothing but, okay, let's say A and B have a certain relationship. Okay, so you are looking for a pair of words that have the same relationship. So if A and B exhibit a certain relationship, you're looking for another pair that is analogous, or in other words, C and D exhibit the same relationship as do A and B, and in that particular order as well. Okay, so let's look into this. Indolence is to work, taciturn is to something. Okay, now as I said right in the beginning of this class, analogy is a test of vocabulary and reasoning as well. Okay, so you need to know what indolence is. Indolence is nothing but laziness, and laziness is, they just don't like to, someone who is lazy does not like to work. Okay, so this is laziness. then taciturn. Okay. Now, something else that I want to mention here, quite a few people when they study their vocabulary list get confused between indolence and insolence. Now remember that insolence has something to do with insult, okay, while indolence is laziness. So, indolence and work. Someone who is indolent refuses to work, correct? So, someone who is taciturn just refuses to speak. He doesn't like speaking, correct? And that is what you have here. Okay. Now, look at this. If I plug speak here, it makes perfect sense, correct? Indolence is the reluctance to work, being taciturn is being reluctant to speak. Now look at this, arc is to circle. What is an arc? This is an arc, this part. Okay, so how do you draw an arc? You have a center, and then it's part of a circle, correct? This is an arc. From point A to point B, you draw an arc. So you have a definite center and a radius, right? So an arc is a part of a circle. So you're looking for something that reflects the same relationship as that, part of, that's the relationship. Number, is that a part of count? No, correct? Then fraction, is it a part of percentage? Absolutely not. A pie, is it a part of a slice? No, a slice is a part of a pie. That's why I said in the same order when I was telling you what analogies were when I was discussing the previous slide, correct? Okay, so the order is of utmost importance. For example, cat is to feline, and then let's say I have asinine is to donkey. Okay, these aren't analogous pairs because cat, cat-like, feline by the way is cat-like, asinine is donkey-like, but donkey is here, the order is mismatched. So these are not analogous to each other. Okay, segment is a part of a line, line segment, a line is goes on and on and on, a line segment is, it has strict boundaries, correct? So this is your answer. Segment is to line and arc is to circle are analogous to each other. So D is your answer. So that is about analogies. Typically to study analogies you would be required to brush up on vocabulary, okay? That is of utmost importance, that's the starting point. Of course, after studying vocabulary and improving on your diction, you're also required to think about the existing relationship between the given pair of words, okay? And then you need to figure out what is analogous to the given pair, right? So that's it about analogies. So we move on to one word substitution. You know what, the beauty of a language, a very well evolved language, lies in using one term to denote something that can be explained, let's say, in a phrase or in a sentence or in a paragraph, okay? For example, there is a Finnish word that means having a glass of beer on a hot day. So this entire phrase can be substituted by one word, one Finnish word. Now I don't speak Finnish, so please don't ask me what the word is, but that's the beauty of an evolved word. Now remember that Finland happens to be an extremely cold place, hence the hence the weird phrases like that. Okay, so let's look at one word substitutions. First and foremost, we look at Schadenfreude. It's nothing new, by the way. This is something that we have discussed in the past. Nevertheless, so Niranjan Kumar, he says D. Okay, all right. Oh, I believe that is your contest question answer. Niranjan, we would be discussing this in the next class. Your next class is going to be tomorrow. Okay, so let's discuss that tomorrow. All right. So coming back to Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is a German language word which comes from Schaden and Freude. It's a portmanteau word, if I might say so. Schaden is misery, Schade. Freude is happiness. Okay, Schadenfreude is something that means misery and happiness together, but that's the transliteration. It means deriving happiness from someone else's misery. Okay, so it's just one single word, one single German word that captures the essence of this phrase, of this entity, of this emotion. Okay, so if you find happiness in someone else's misery, you exhibit Schadenfreude. Okay, then this is the German. See, that's the beauty of certain languages. Let's look at menu. Menu is something that all of us make use of. We don't even realize that it is not an English word in the first place. Menu actually is French. It's of French origin. It means bill of fare. So when you go to a restaurant and you ask for the menu, you actually ask for the bill of fare. What does the menu card contain? It lists food items that's available in the restaurant and the fare or the tariff, the bill, the amount of money it's going to cost you, correct? So bill of fare, that's the English phrase, and you have menu to replace that. Okay. How many of you have read J.K. Rowling's, not Harry Potter, but she writes a certain series under the pseudonym Robert Galbraith. What's a pseudonym, by the way? Nym is the root word for name, pseudo is false. For example, I can say homeopathy is a pseudoscience, meaning it's a fake science, it's not a science at all. Okay, or astrology is a pseudoscience. Pseudonym is false name. So J.K. Rowling, after her stupendous success with Harry Potter, she wanted to, just give it a shot. Okay, fine, I am J.K. Rowling and I am somebody in the literary world. What people read my own writing if I were to write under a different name? Okay, so she came up with the Cormoran Strike novel series. Okay, so Cormoran Strike, please pick it up, start reading if you are into modern mysteries. Okay, so the Cormoran Strike novels, the first one was The Cuckoo's Calling. Okay, so when that was introduced, it was under the name of Robert Galbraith, and there was no mention of JKR at all. Okay, and then we learned that Galbraith is the pseudonym of JKR. All right, so that is a pseudonym. How did we start here? Anyhow, so the bill of fare versus menu conundrum is very well discussed in The Cuckoo's Calling. Okay, so that is where I learned that menu actually means bill of fare, and that careful native English British speakers of the language do not use menu, they actually use bill of fare. Alright, so now Bildungsroman, this again is something that we have seen earlier. Bildungsroman means, just a sec, yeah. Shabaz Khan says, good morning ma'am. Hi Shabaz, good morning, how are you? It's been a long time. So Bildungsroman means coming of age. Typically it's used in literary terms. It means a set of books, a categorization of books where you know the narrator of the book becomes an adult, sees the world, the adult world, grows up in the process of that particular book. Okay, so that is Bildungsroman. Do you have any examples of Bildungsroman novels? One is To Kill a Mockingbird. Then of course there is the Tom Sawyer series. So one book is Tom Sawyer and his adventures, the other is, how many of you have also read Huckleberry Finn? Anyhow, so look at this. When we are dealing with one word substitutions, I also want to, you know, end the class here with this particular slide. Okay, so in today's world of racism, of you know, wherever you go, there is some sort of prejudice, there is some sort of discrimination against people. Okay, so I wanted to you know, explain one word substitution with this slide for a very specific reason. Okay, look at this. I can say I'm an immigrant and people will say no, you're an expat. It's almost coded now that immigrant means a brown person, a person coming from an economic disadvantage, but that's really nonsense. Okay, so who is an immigrant and who is an expat? Expatriate, by the way, is short for, expat is short for expatriate. Okay. This, by the way, is, I mean, I pat myself on the back for having, you know, given you this particular slide, because A, it gives you phrases, you know, one word substitution for phrases, and it is also a portmanteau word, the word expatriate. Okay. So X is to go out, patriot, a country, you know, belonging to a country, having pride in a country, right? So an expat, if you find an American in Paris, in India, a British person, someone of, say, French origin in Indonesia, okay? So all of these people, white people from certain countries, Europeans, and typically to do with the richer countries of Europe, USA, Australia, New Zealand. So if people of these countries move out and stay in other countries typically, you know, brown countries, they become expats. Okay, but on the other hand, if you and I move and stay in the US or UK, we are called immigrants. Okay, so also remember that the term immigrant has a certain undervalued, you know, connotation, while the term expat has a very different connotation. Okay, an expat is someone who is respected. He is typically in a white collar job, while an immigrant, whether I have a white collar or a blue collar job and I stay in London, I'm still an immigrant. Whereas, whatever he is, a British citizen, you know, sitting in Bengaluru or Delhi, Bombay, Chennai, is someone who is an expat. Okay, so with this one slide, we've seen portmanteau, we've seen one word substitution, and something a little more, socially telling, correct? Okay, so that's it for today's class. We summarize, we've done portmanteau words. So that was our vocabulary part for the day, and then we did analogy questions, and then one word substitution. Okay, so today's class was focused on vocabulary, correct? And we call it a close with this. We go on to our CPP time. So the CPP is a set of expertly curated questions. They are 10 in number, and these CPP questions are framed with one thing in mind. Whatever you study here in class, you would be finding application for those particular concepts in your CPP questions. Okay, so unless you do the CPP questions, you don't really have an idea of how to apply the concepts that you've studied in class. Okay, and the CPP questions are open only to Passport members. Passport members, please make sure you go ahead, do your CPP questions on time, right away. It's open right away. Also share it with other people. Okay, so good luck with your CPP. Have fun. Have a great weekend as well. Bye.